After drawing a grandmaster in round 1, I am playing with the white pieces against a FIDE Master who's 2200. I hope you enjoy this recap of round 2 of the Maya Chess Open. As is tradition, just like last year, I am in a Cornfield patch. You get that? So I started off with e4, e5. This is the Italian after knight f3, knight c6, and bishop c4. My opponent goes with knight f6. Now this was perhaps the easiest preparation that I've ever done in my life. I looked up on ChessBase his name. He plays only one line against e4, and I just memorized the theory that I had from our Anishgiri course, which I gave to you guys in our Discord for free a while back. For those who know, you got it for free. So castles, d6, and then I go a4. The idea is that on d6, black is preparing knight a5 to trap my bishop and win the bishop pair. So I need to give my bishop just a square on a2. My opponent goes g6, and this is the idea of the system. You want to fianchetto your bishop against the Italian and go castle short. So I go knight c3, bishop g7, and typically why we go knight c3 over c3, maybe you've seen me play c3 in other chess games, is that knight c3 now just cramps up that d5 square and just gives us a small edge as white. So bishop g7, h3. Here I'm taking up this square because I'm preparing bishop e3 and queen d2. By the way, I am still in book, and now my opponent Ronan starts taking a little bit of time. He gets little by little out of book. So now he takes 6 minutes for castles, and I'm still in book. I go bishop e3, still memorization, and now he gets unsure. He takes a 5, a 10, 20, and then 28-minute turn. Only to play the best move. So at least he played the best move, knight a5, which is black's plan. So you hit the bishop, force the bishop back, and then you go c5 and cramp up my d4 square. So I go back, I'm still in book, like I was waiting for this move, c5, and then I go knight d5. I play this immediately. I have an hour and 26 minutes on my clock, and this is still book. The best move here is knight c6. If you take my knight, I believe black might have some problems after takes, and this knight is looking a little bit funky. Or at least bishop takes, if I remember correctly, bishop e6 and c4. And this bishop is an absolute dime on d5. So knight c6 prevents any, the knight just goes back. It's still theory, but he takes another like 3-4 minutes. So now I have a 30-minute advantage on my opponent. It's like time odds. It's insane. We're only 11 moves in, and I'm still in book. But I'm deciding between two moves now. Queen d2 or knight takes f6. I know that it's either one of them. They're interchangeable seemingly, and in my course that I have, it's queen d2, king here, and then it's like takes, queen takes is forced. If the bishop takes, this pawn is lost, and then you go knight g5. This is still theory, by the way. If takes, the queen is trapped. So black has like two options, king h8, king g8, two very different reactions for both moves. And then I go c3, and then eventually I'll sack here on f7. And that's theory. But I look at this and I go, why not just take here? I didn't fully remember which one it was, because it can just transpose. After takes, queen d2, king h7, and we have the same exact line, and I'm back in book, right? 15 moves in, super cool. But the problem is, on queen d2, I was just very worried about g5. And I was thinking to myself, after this sacrifice, it doesn't look fully working because just black takes off my target. Turns out it's a mistake, as you can see. And here I have f4, which I didn't see during the game. Bishop takes, taking off my attacker of the f6 pinned knight. And now I take on e5, opening up my rook, my pawn, and my bishop on the knight. You have to take back with the knight here, and then I collect on d5 again, and after knight d7, yes, black are up a piece, but the defense of this knight is extremely tough. Every single piece is reliant on the defense of this knight, while we just build slowly and gradually on the weakness, and eventually white wins. It's very hard to foresee this if you don't know the theory. So I go with knight takes f6, thinking that this is a little bit more forced, queen takes, and then queen d2, attacking this pawn. On king here, I'm fine, knight g5 as we saw. But then my opponent pulls this out of his hat. And now I'm like, oh my god, this is suddenly threatened. If I take back, queen takes f3. So I'm like, I think I messed up the order, and I think I'm a little worse right now. So I proceed to take like a lot of time to just make sure that I'm doing fine here. And I realize that if I play any move here, let's say c3, bishop takes is not actually that serious because I have knight takes g5. And this is called a desperado. The knight is desperate to get off of this square, so it sacks itself off. So here, black has two options. Either bishop takes g2, for which I thought king takes, and then after takes, I have bishop takes here, queen here, and black is sadly not in time to win my bishop through this pin because I have rook g1, which I saw. And after like bishop here, I have king f1, and I'm completely winning. So bishop takes g2 doesn't work, although takes is a little bit closer. I had to be very careful. And I thought takes, queen g6, takes, and after bishop h6, I have h4. King g7, king h2. And now after rook here, I have rook g1. And here I'm fine, because after bishop takes, I would simply pin the queen with rook takes g5. So I was ready to go through with this sacrifice, and I just played any move, c3. And it was the best move. Here, c3 is very, very normal for the Italian. We're just playing against this knight completely. Bishop e6 is played now. And now this is kind of hanging over my head, and I don't really appreciate that. So I'm very confused here, and I think of all kinds of different alternatives. I panic a little bit, and I take here. I use like 10 minutes. Now we're like equal time, which is kind of sad because I had like a 30-minute time advantage. But what is the 30 minutes for if it's not to regroup? So I take on e6, and black has two options. I thought that after pawn takes, doesn't really have much. Like attacking wise, h5 doesn't work, g4 doesn't work. The black position is not that good, whereas I can expand on the queen side. So I thought this has to be queen takes is forced. And the only reason why I took on e6, because it gives black so much play, is that I can prevent this f5 break with g4, which by the way, the computer is so unemotional, it's like, you can do anything here. It's like b4 is the best move. Like not even caring about f5, which I find completely absurd. And so now I prevent f5, but I don't prevent d5. But then I saw that I do prevent d5 because this hangs. So that's why I went through with bishop takes e6. You have to see that first. So b6 is played naturally to now threaten this d5 push. And I only see one move. It betrays every moral principle of the Italian. I only see one move to prevent d5 here. If d5 is led on the board, black is better. Simple as that. I thought this during the game, and the engine confirmed, so I play c4. And c4 betrays my Italian because we're not playing against this knight anymore. The knight is a monster. We're giving it two outposts at the same time. But the engine is like, white still has a small edge, which I'm like, what? Here I think I'm worse. I misevaluated maybe like the next 10 moves. Added on to the last 5 moves. Misevaluation. I think that black is better. And it makes me do dubious moves. So that's why you always have to believe in your position in chess. Because I didn't do any mistake, right? So rook b8 is played, and my opponent wants this break now. He wants to just break my pawn structure every time. I go rook fb1, clearing the square on f1 for a potential knight h2, knight f1, knight g3, knight f5. This is the square where my knight is now a knight again, and not just a piece taking up the f3 square. And rook b1 as well. b4 can be played if the knight ever moves. So a6, kind of bluffing this b5. I was very scared of b5 though, although it was a bluff. In hindsight, this was very scary to me, and I play something to anticipate it. You see, I foresaw that after b5 takes, I kind of have to solidify c4 here, do b3, and you know, we're kind of giving this b4 square, and I was gonna just, you know, tag along and play knight c2 to prophylactically trade off these knights upon a knight b4. But my opponent plays very well here, I must say. He just doesn't commit to this b5, and all power to him, because this knight e1 is just dependent on that b5, and without b5 played, the knight is dubious at best looking. So knight e7 is played. I go b4, right? Very good move, best move of the position. Knight g6 is played, threatening to go knight f4, and I get extremely scared. Once again, I think that black is like minus 0.4 at the time. The engine seems to think, if I put strong engine on, that I'm like at 0.6 here, on account of king h2. I looked at king h2, but first I played a5, which is a bit dubious, but in hindsight it's what creates counterplay on the queen side for me. So after knight f4, I have two options. Be honest with me which one you would play. Either I defend this h3 square, a pawn, and let like h5, and then I would have to play f3 or queen d1 to defend the g4 pawn, and then let him take, and then I take back with a pawn or a queen, and then queen h6 check, and the queen comes in, etc. Or I take this knight, and this bishop is suddenly very strong upon this diagonal, attacks my rook, but there are less h5 things, and counterplay is mitigated. The engine gives plus 0.5 on king h2, and says that after h5 queen d1, which I looked at thoroughly, and this is why I decided not to play it, takes, queen takes f5, e takes, rook takes. I was like, this is better for black, because now our counterplay is in the game. A takes b6, rook takes, and then we can just like take here on c5. And now like I'm like completely blasting through the center. I'm winning a pawn here on c5. It's winning for white completely. And f3 didn't look that good to me, and it's not good because of just queen h6, not even taking on g4. And if I would have gone through with king h2, I would have played f3 here, just because queen d1 seems so bad to me. I forgot completely my counterplay on the queen side, which I was harvesting, pun intended. I farmed the joke. That was corny. Look, I'm ready to be a father. So I end up taking this knight, and it's a mistake. Because after takes, this bishop is so nice and dominates my knight for the rest of the game. It's such a long-term advantage. The short-term benefits I thought I would have, which was less attack against me, backfires completely in my face. Rook a2. He plays b5. I was very surprised about this. So here, I played rook c2, and my opponent has options. Takes, takes, takes. I had like rook takes, but I'm already worse, right? Because I'm giving this bottom rank the file, everything black has here. So from here on out, it's very hard to play this position. B takes. If I take with the pawn, this one drops. Very, very not good. So I have to take with the rook, and then he goes h5. Wow. Pressuring g4, and now my position is really hanging on a single thread. On queen d1, I didn't like, even though this looks like it holds a little bit. Takes, queen takes. Yeah, this actually might have been okay. This was like my last chance, I think, in this position, because I go f3, and you know it's a bad move, but it's the only move that seems that you can play. And it's just like completely losing. Takes, takes, d5, attacking my rook. After rook takes, there's bishop here. And after rook c1, there's bishop check, king here, and then bishop e3. GG's. So I moved to c2. I don't know why I didn't take here. I thought it was too ugly probably, which it is, but it's the best move. I go rook c2, and then black just completely invades me. The rook comes in to the open file. I go queen g2, giving a pawn, and then queen h1. And trades happen. Queen takes on g4 was what I thought would happen. He plays queen a2. Ow, it's -6. And there's no hope here. I should have just resigned here. Like rook takes queen. Anyways, the endgame happens, and I can't do anything against this pin. I have a last cheapo e6, which is like if he takes everything, he's in bad trouble, because I sort of win here with e7. Of course, he sees it, and we get to move 40. I get my extra time, but it's needless, and I resign on f takes e6. It was very weird because my opponent was off of the board, and I really wanted to resign, and I had to resign to like nobody. So I just like paused the clock, put the kings on either black square of the center, and was like kind of waiting for him to come claim his victory. It was kind of a sobering defeat. But yeah, I played on way too long here, so I probably deserved that at the end of the day. Yeah, I have 0.5 out of 2. Not the start I hoped for. It's okay. I'll get back in it. I'm very, very positive about this. I'm optimistic, bruv.